A toddler drops onto all fours, bares his teeth, and sinks them into his own mother's arm. This wasn't a tantrum. It was learned behavior, copied precisely from his baby sister. His sister was a chimpanzee. And by month 9, he'd stopped speaking like a boy, and started speaking like her boy, and started speaking like her. Rural Florida, 1931. This was a real science experiment, and the scientists were his own parents. June 26, 1931. Psychologist Winthrop Kellogg brings home a 7-month-old chimp named Gwa. His own son Donald is 10 months old, chimp named Gwa. His own son Donald is 10 months old. Kellogg's plan: raise them exactly the same. Same crib, same clothes, same spoon, same bathwater. 12 hours a day. Test it. This wasn't a metaphor. This was comparative psychology, published later as The Ape and the Child. Kellogg's question was simple. If environment shapes everything, can an ape become human? He'd studied wolf children, kids raised in isolation. This was the reverse experiment. For the first months, it worked. Almost too well. By 1-year-old, Gwa opened doors, drank from a glass, wore shoes before Donald could. She understood over 20 spoken commands. She hugged, she kissed goodnight like a daughter would. On paper, the ape was winning the race to become human, which the Kellogg's found thrilling, right up until it stopped being just Gwa's story. Because somewhere in that shared crib, the influence had started running both ways. Month 1, Donald, who'd already learned to walk, starts crawling again, on all fours, like Gwa. Not because he forgot how to walk, because crawling was faster, and Gwa made it look normal. Still seems fine. Toddlers regress. Parents shrug this off constantly. Month 2, Donald starts biting. Not tantrums, a specific chimp-style bite, learned from Gwa. He picks up small objects with his mouth instead of his hands. A shoe, a spoon, a toy. Kellogg writes it down as data, which is technically correct. Cataloging your toddler's bite marks as developmental data is one way to cope with parenting. Month 3, at meals, Donald stops asking for food with words. He starts grunting for it instead. His vocabulary, which should be growing fast at this age, quietly stalls. Meanwhile, Gwa is doing everything a toddler does except say a single human word. She never will. Her vocal anatomy physically can't form the sounds. No amount of love fixes that. So while Gwa hits a hard biological ceiling, Donald just keeps sliding under it. At 19 months old, an age where most kids know 50-plus words, Donald knows three words. At 19 months, raised by 2 psychologists in a house full of language. The experiment designed to prove environment shapes everything was working, just not the way they'd planned. Week by week, Donald starts responding to commands in Gwa's version of obedience, not his own. He responds to his name with a grunt now, not a word. A grunt. The Kellogg's start noticing something they hadn't planned to measure. Which direction was the humanizing going? They'd set out to humanize an ape. Instead, they were quietly dehumanizing their son, which is, in fairness, exactly the kind of side effect a controlled family experiment tends to produce. Donald starts recognizing people by smell and clothing texture, the way Gwa does, instead of faces. For a species that relies almost entirely on facial recognition to bond, that's not a small shift. Gwa, meanwhile, keeps recognizing faces just fine. She's just never going to say whose. By month 5, the household test log reads less like child psychology and more like a warning label. Donald starts biting harder, hard enough that playful stops being the right word. Gwa, now stronger and heavier than Donald despite being 3 months younger, starts getting harder to control. A chimpanzee's strength advantage over a human toddler isn't subtle, it isn't close, which means the household now has 2 toddlers, and only one of them could actually hurt the other. Not because Gwa was cruel. Because Gwa was a chimpanzee, and chimpanzees don't know their own strength. Neither, it turns out, do overconfident psychologists running a 5-year plan on their own baby. By this point, Donald's language had gone from delayed to nearly absent for anything human. Instead of new words, he was adding new chimp sounds to his repertoire. Panting, grunting, screeching. Somewhere in that Florida house, a scientific milestone had quietly turned into a household emergency. March 1932. Dinner time. Donald wants food, and instead of asking, he does something new. He opens his mouth and lets out Gwa's exact feeding cry. Not a word, her cry. His mother freezes mid-motion, not because it was loud, because it was fluent. Her son wasn't struggling to speak chimp. He'd become fluent in it, more fluent than in English. 19 months of controlled science had just produced an uncontrolled result, a child fluent in the wrong species. That night, the Kellogg's sat down and do the math on their 5-year plan. They'd planned 5 years of this. They didn't make it past 9 months. On March 28, 1932, the experiment ends. Not with a press release. With a decision made at a kitchen table. Gua is sent back to the primate center the very next week. She's a specimen again, not a daughter. 18 months later, at just 3 years old, Gua dies of pneumonia in that facility. Donald stays home, but the household doesn't just snap back to normal overnight. For weeks after Gua leaves, he still crawls more than he walks. Still reaches for food with his mouth. It turns out unlearning 9 months of imitation takes longer than 9 months of building it did. Kellogg published the results in 1933 as The Ape and the Child. It made him famous. Famous is one word for it. There's also this quote attributed to him later in life. He reportedly said he regretted the study, not for what it did to his son, but for his own reputation. Read that again. Not the son, the reputation. This is, technically, the point where the experiment stopped being about Gua at all. Here's the part the experiment never explained. Why did the influence only run one direction? Gua hit a wall, Donald never did. Her vocal tract is physically shaped wrong for human speech. No amount of environment fixes hardware. That's biology, not upbringing. But Donald's brain had no such wall. A human toddler's brain is built to absorb whatever surrounds it. This is called a critical period, a narrow window where language gets wired and almost automatically. Miss that window with the wrong input, and the brain wires itself to whatever it actually got. Donald didn't get delayed English. He got fluent chimp, because that's what filled the window instead. This isn't just a 1930s curiosity. Decades later, a girl named Jeannie proved the same window, cruelly. Found in 1970 after 13 years of near-total isolation, Jeannie never fully acquired grammar, ever. Not because she wasn't taught, because by 13, the window that built Donald's chimp fluency had already shut. Same mechanism, same window. 2 completely different tragedies decades apart. So here's the twist. The experiment didn't prove environment beats biology. It proved biology sets the deadline. Environment doesn't get to choose whether it shapes you. It only gets to choose what it shapes you into, which is a genuinely unsettling thing to learn about the first 2 years of your own life. You didn't choose what filled your window. Someone else did, long before you could vote on it. So what happened to Donald, the boy who learned to bark before he learned to talk? He caught up, fully. Language, school, everything. The delay didn't follow him into childhood. He went on to graduate Indiana University, then Harvard Medical School. He became a psychiatrist. The boy who once communicated in chimp grunts spent his career listening to the human mind for a living. In 1973, at 43 years old, Donald died by suicide, 6 months after his father passed away. Historians genuinely don't know why. And to be clear, nothing links this directly back to those 9 months in 1931. It's tempting to draw a straight line. The honest answer is, we just don't have one. What we do know is this: those first 2 years wired something into him that took years to unlearn. You don't need a chimpanzee sibling for this to apply to you. Right now, somewhere, a baby's critical window is being filled by a phone screen instead of a face. Researchers studying early screen exposure are asking a version of Kellogg's exact question, just with different subjects. What fills a child's first 2 years doesn't just entertain them. It becomes part of their wiring. Nobody's raising a chimp in their nursery anymore. But the window Kellogg stumbled onto is still wide open, and every single day, something is filling it, whether or not anyone's writing it down in a notebook. So here's a real question this whole story leaves behind. What filled your window? And what do you think is filling the window for the kids around you right now? If you like this one, there's a whole channel of real science taken exactly one step too far. Subscribe if you want more of these, and drop a comment with the next what if you want us to break down. Because somewhere out there, there's probably another experiment just as strange as this one, still waiting to be found.